Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our study of the book of Psalms. Today we are in Psalm 5, and in this particular psalm you have an emphasis by King David on the requests of God, as it were, in the morning or in a morning prayer. Now, it is set in a song layout and those kinds of things, but this is going to be kind of the morning request of David. It's slightly longer than some of the others that we've dealt with to this point, but not overly so. So we will deal with both the text and the lessons today. What's found in Psalm 5? Beginning in verse 1, we read these words: Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my meditation. Give heed to the voice of my cry, my King and my God, for to you I will pray. My voice you shall hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning I will direct it to you, and I will look up. For you are not a God who takes pleasure in wickedness, nor shall evil dwell with you. The boastful shall not stand in your sight. You hate all workers of iniquity. You shall destroy those who speak falsehood. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into your house in the multitude of your mercy. In fear of you I will worship toward your holy temple. Lead me, O Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight before my face. For there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is destruction. Their throat is an open tomb. They flatter with their tongue. Pronounce them guilty, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against you. But let all those who put their trust in you, let them ever shout for joy, because you defend them. Let those also who love your name be joyful in you. For you, O Lord, will bless the righteous. With favor you will surround him as with a shield. Here you have this cry from David, and yet it's not necessarily a cry of pain or of distress, as it were, but instead it is more a plea, a request that is being made. And so as we come into the lessons from Psalm 5, what are some things that we need to focus on, or what are some things that we should point out as we're trying to apply the principles of what David says here to our request to God? I want to notice a couple of things today. First of all, I want us to notice in verse 4 that David is mindful of the fact that God has no delight in wickedness, that there is nothing that gives God pleasure out of people doing what is wrong. He says, nor shall evil dwell with you. And so, therefore, if God takes no pleasure in wickedness, and if evil will not dwell with him, then those are things that cannot be a part of our lives if we are going to seek to be where he is. He says that the boastful shall not stand in your sight. You hate all workers of iniquity. You destroy those who speak falsehood. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. These are all things that God cannot stand, if we were to put it in our parlance. He cannot stand those who do iniquity, those who do the wrong thing intentionally. He cannot stand those who are bloodthirsty, those who are liars, those who are deceitful. And so, therefore, those things are things that we need to make sure are not a part of our lives, because the Lord will not allow those things to dwell with him. But not only that, David continues in this prayer by making the statement in verse 8. He says, Lead me, O Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight for my face. This is the request. Lead me in your righteousness. Now he says, because of my enemies. And the principle here is David has to deal with enemies. And he has to deal with choices that have to be made on how he's going to deal with those situations, how he's going to lead the people in those areas. And he asks God to lead him, to help him make the right choices, to help direct him down the right path. He says, make your way straight before my face. In other words, make the path clear as to what it is I'm supposed to do. You know, this should be our prayer every day. That in the choices that we have to make, that God will lead us in his righteousness, and that we will be those who are looking for the right path from God. Now, that doesn't mean that we're waiting on God to hit us over the head and say, turn right. But at the same time, it also means we are looking for God's guidance, which means when there's choices that we have to make, we're going to go to the source of where God speaks to find out what God has to say about what our choices should be. If we're going to let God lead, then we have to be willing to listen. David here calls on God to lead him in his righteousness. But then in the third place, at the end of the psalm, David is going to make this statement in verses 11 and 12. He says, but let all those rejoice who put their trust in you. Let them ever shout for joy because you defend them. Let those also who love your name be joyful in you, for you, O Lord, will bless the righteous. With favor you will surround him as with a shield. You have the contrast between the way that the Lord looks upon wickedness, and at the end of the psalm, the way that he looks toward righteousness, toward those who are righteous. The Lord will bless the righteous. Therefore, let those who are doing what is right, those who put their trust in God, those who are seeking the favor of God by means of their obedience, let them rejoice. Let them have joy, for the Lord will hear their prayer, and the Lord will bless them. You know, there is an expectation that we can and should have when we are striving to do what is right, that God listens and that God responds to our prayers, that God knows what it is we're going through and that he cares. Now, for some people, they are looking for a God who is going to take away all of their problems and they're never going to have any issues again and everything is going to be fixed immediately. That wasn't the way it was for David. That was not the way David's life worked, and it's not the way any servant of God's life has worked. And yet at the same time, in the midst of hardship, the servant of God is often able to look up and see the blessings that have been placed before him every step of the way, and the way that God has taken care of those who put their trust in him. May not always be in the ways that the world is looking for or that the world wants to see. And yet God's love and his care and his concern are always present. These are the things that I've seen as I've studied Psalm 5, and I hope that they will be beneficial to you. Next time we're going to come back and we will begin looking at the 6th Psalm. I hope you'll join us then. But until then, have a great day.